Hello, I decided to record one additional episode about the Hawk, specifically about light missile Hawk. I know that many people prefer to use Rocket Hawk, but light missile one is also quite feasible. It's just not very popular. And I wanted to test it and get some first-hand experience, especially for the next yearbook, which will cover assault frigates. So I decided, since we are using the Hawk anyway, why not test one additional feat. So this is the feat. Um, it's fairly straightforward. There is nothing expensive. You have 4 light missile launchers. You need Tech 2 for Tech 2 ammo, which is quite important in matchups against destroyers. When Micro Drive 4 Disruptor, MASB for tank, and 2 nanos, I think double nano is pretty much required for the Hawk, because assault frigates in general are quite slow, and Hawk in particular is quite slow as a Caldari frigate. So I feel like you need double nanos to kind of compensate for that. And you're generally starved for CPU in these light missile feats anyway, so you can't really fit assault damage control or ballistic control system without compromising a lot on the fit in other areas. The rigs are, one is the fitting rig and the other is the, again, speed and agility rig. And in the remaining medium slots, I use EVOR and EM shield amplifier to plug the EM resist hole. You can use different modules here. You can probably uh, use something else, like, I don't know, like a web, screening web, or screening scrum, or maybe additional EVOR and just plug the resist hole with rigs. But I found that this is what worked the best for me. I think you also need some kind of EVOR against long-range destroyers to kind of mitigate the damage. So I think this is like the most logical fit that I could come up with. As I said, nothing too expensive. It costs about 50 million, which is basically as cheap as you can get for an assault frigate. The problem of this feat that it's a bit tight on capacitor. It has only 2 minutes of cap, but I found in practice that you actually rarely, or I think even never, I had a problem with a cap. Because first you have a bunch of event boosters that help with a cap regen, and in addition you actually do not use both EVOR and tackle all the time. Sometimes you don't need EVOR, sometimes you don't need to tackle. Sometimes you can just save cap and shut down micro warp drive for 5 to 10 seconds, and it helps a lot. So, like, even though it looks dangerously low for a kiter that will take part in prolonged engagements, in practice I found that it works just fine. So I didn't use anything to kind of mitigate the cap. I used all 3 frigates similarly to the previous run, but I will only show you one of his runs, the first one specifically. I got, I think, 7 kills before I died. The second Hawk just died minutes after the first one, and in the third one, which is what I mean right now, I got essentially the same engagements. So I just don't really see the point of doing several videos, because they will be the same. And there are a lot of fights anyway. When I edited the run on the first Hawk, it was like 20 minutes. So I think it's more than enough to get the point across. Yeah, so I will only show you like one life of this light missile Hawk. And I will talk about my impressions and my opinion about strengths and weaknesses of this fit. Okay, let's go to the fights. Okay, let's watch some fights. As usual, I will show you all the meaningful fights without like editing them. Some of them will be fairly straightforward and they will kind of run in the background. Others I will comment on in a bit more detail. So my like general impressions from this feat is that it's really good at fighting destroyers and killing destroyers. You are practically hard counter any destroyer. It doesn't matter if it's like short range or long range feat. Maybe the only exceptions are drone destroyers, but single drone destroyers simply don't have enough applied DPS to really challenge you. Even when you go against like Navy long-range Navy destroyers, I feel like the damage mitigation and the raw tank that you get is sufficient to outlast them. Because remember, as an assault frigate, you have 50% reduction in signature radius, and you have tech to resists against some damage. Well, in the case of a Hawk, it's thermal and kinetic damage, and you have pretty powerful MASB, even like without some of the tanking modules, it's still quite reasonable. And you have Track-and Disruptor on top of that. So it's really, really difficult to apply damage to you. But other than destroyers, I found that the Hawk is usable, but it's not amazing. Like as usual, when you fight against some of frigates with afterburners, the biggest problem is the application for light missiles. You need to use faction light missiles, which cut down on your DPS, and it just takes so long to kill them. So it's really not the best tool for the job. And against cruisers, you can engage cruisers just fine, and you will see this is actually one of the fights that I probably should comment on in a bit more detail. But your DPS is just not enough to realistically kill a cruiser. Unfortunately, like you can poke, you can fly around, tackle, shoot some drones, but it's just not realistic that you will actually kill the cruiser with 150 DPS, especially considering that you're actually like in the long run you are still limited on cap if you want to like, keep tackle all the time. Even with drugs and everything, well, you can squeeze the cap up to maybe like 4 minutes, but you are not gonna kill a cruiser in 4 minutes. Yeah, this is the fight against, I think it's a multi-boxer. Caracal Navy is the trigger, and Vexor's drone bunnies. You can engage in these fights in a kiting ship. There is really not much they can do against you because they don't have a control. But you just need to know when to leave. And against Vexors, it's you can't kite the drones if they have a proper pack of flight drones, and once we catch you, you will start taking damage, and once you start taking damage, you will just eventually die, run out of cap and die, run out of tank and die. This one I think is a funny engagement. Yeah, like Hawk is really good at killing Navy catalysts that are very popular in insurgencies. So you can even engage like a bunch of catalysts if you want. I'm not really like the best pilot with kiting ships and with light missile ships in particular. I don't make blunders that often, but you can see, and you will see in some future fights, that I could have extracted way more from some of the fights when I did in reality. So in this situation, one of the catalysts screens me out, and I kind of have to manually pilot around him. If they were solo, it's fine. You just tackle the second catalyst and start working on him. But you see, they have backup with Orthrus and Navy Vexor, and they have to just bail. I will have several more fights against these guys, I think. I think this one, this was on a different day, and it was kind of funny. Yeah, this one was kind of funny. So I tackled the Navy Catalyst in a Plex, and when I just after orbit, nothing he can do. And when the next Navy Catalyst appears, and this is fine, I can fight against two catalysts, I can fight even against five catalysts. They're not really, they don't really have a control to be a serious threat. But I think somewhere here I got a phone call, or maybe a bit later, and I had to like manage the phone call and manage the manual piloting around a bunch of catalysts. So you will see in this fight, like at some point, maybe it was a bit later, my like piloting and decision making go suddenly become much worse when we were before. Like here, it's okay. Two catalysts, it's not a big deal. I just stay on auto orbit. Um, I shoot one guy. Yeah, and then two more catalysts appear on scan. So the problem with these situations, I actually almost fly into the scrum web of another catalyst. I think here I already was on the phone call. Yeah, the problem with decision making in this fight is that I kind of was tunnel visioned on a single catalyst, but you don't actually need to do that. You will see in the next fight against these guys where I actually wasn't on a phone call. How do you actually play against this? You just tackle the guy that tries to screen you out, and they still cannot leave the grid because if they leave, well, I just kill a different catalyst. It's not problem. Yeah, and here I see Orthrus on scan, and I immediately start to look for a way out, but it's a small complex. I didn't actually need to do that because Orthrus cannot enter this complex. Yeah, so I was a bit distracted here. But regardless, I think the next fight it will be against the same guys, and it will be a bit better. We will see. Okay, let's look at the second fight against the same pack of Navy Catalysts. So the general approach to these fights is to keep one of the targets tackled and to keep applying some damage on one of them. And if one of the targets comes in to screen you out away from the primary, so to say, you just tackle the ship that's trying to screen you out. And then you repeat this process over and over and over again. And eventually they will have to leave one of the ships on grid, and then you can just kill this ship. So as you can see here, I pushed one of the catalysts from the grid. He warped out, and here I'm just DPSing the second catalyst. As you can see, the piloting is not the best. I am losing the point quite regularly. It's not actually that big of a deal because it's really difficult for for the guys on grid to coordinate the warp outs. So even when you have a little bit of downtime uh, when you don't actually have a point on one of the ships, it's really difficult for them to like coordinate. Okay, are we warping out or are we staying? And like if one of them decides to warp out and the other will not be aligned, or like he will be just too slow, what happens is you just get a tackle stray on the stray ship. But in this case, I just pushed the second catalyst off the grid, and then I just killed the remaining one. You also need to remember when you fight in these insurgency complexes that all of this scenery is actually physical, so you can bump on this scenery. And when it was just released, I think I lost a couple of ships because I just didn't realize that these objects are actually bumpable, and I like bumped off one of these structures right into a scrum of a guy that tried to chase me. Yeah, so especially if you like sit on after orbit like I do right now, you need to occasionally check that your outer orbit does not go through one of these structures. Otherwise, you will not have a good time. Like here, you can see I bumped off a bit. It didn't matter against the catalyst, but it does matter against more mobile opposition, so to say. Okay, next one. This one is fairly short. I tackled Navy Coercer. Since I have Track and Disruptor, he is just dead. He cannot apply DPS on me, but again, the Orthrus lands and they have to bail. Okay, let's watch the next fight. This is against a pack of multi-boxing Algoses. My experience against Algos packs is that you can fight against 3 Algoses fine, 4 Algoses it's difficult, and 5 Algoses I feel like it's not possible. Unless maybe you have high-grade snakes and links and very good piloting, but you can't really outrun the drones. And 5 Algoses, they just dish out too much DPS. Even if you like pilot properly, you will see a couple of fights at the end against like a proper multi-boxing Algos pack. I tested a couple of approaches against them, but my conclusion is that it's not really possible, at least in this fit. Okay, this fight, Algos on the outside very far. I don't really care about Algos. Catalyst is inside. He is on the beacon, but you can easily burn away from the catalyst. You have just much better control, even out of position. And once you get a tackle, it's over. You don't even need the Evor. Okay, I think you have seen this fight like many times already. I'll just speed it up because really nothing happens once you get a tackle. There is nothing the Catalyst can do. Just controls is just too different. And he also gets stuck on one of these structures that I mentioned earlier. Okay. Oh yeah, and now an heavy catalyst. Well, I guess you have an idea what's gonna happen. I just burn away for one cycle, when switch into orbit. When I realize that it's blast another catalyst, so I don't need Evor, and after that it's GG. I will speed it up again. Yeah, you can see that Hawks are just what these light missile Hawks. They are just really good at killing these like semi-farming navy destroyers. And since they are so popular in insurgency zones, you actually have a pretty decent engagement profile compared to Rocket Hawk, even compared to Rocket Hawk, because in the light missile Hawk you don't care about the backup. If they bring something, you can fight again. Okay, this is one of the last fights. This is actually a proper multi-boxing pack. I even have it marked with red standings. So here I got a bit confused, actually. In these situations, you always want to shoot the trigger, which is the Harry AR character. But since he didn't he didn't lock me up first, I was kind of confused about who is the trigger. The reason why you want to shoot the trigger, because triggers usually have a lower tank. And I get stuck on this scenery again, and when you get stuck on the scenery, you are completely cooked. But thankfully, I managed to warp out first. Okay, yeah, but back to my point. The the trigger usually has lower tank because it has to feed something to enhance the lock and something to aggress the drones. Because usually in drone frigates, in drone ships in general, I think it's not even usually, it's always, the locking range is shorter than the drone control range. So when you have a trigger, you need trigger to lock really far to aggress the drones. And here I actually start shooting the trigger because I already rewatched the previous footage and I realized who is the trigger. But here I make a pretty big blunder. I start turning before I moved all the drones into like sausage. And you need the cloud of drones to be like behind you in a sausage formation. Because then you can slowly turn and only a few drones will actually DPS you. Others will be just chasing you on MWD. But here, since the cloud of drones already was on me, when I started turning, I got just alphaed by the entire cloud of drones. You can't do that. You need to burn in a straight line first, turn the cloud of drones into a sausage, and then slowly turn around the trigger ship, go back into a position where you can DPS it down, and only then start a DPSing down. It was played correctly in the first clip, but I just shot the wrong ship and I bumped off one of the structures. But here it wasn't played correctly by me. But yeah, this was my the death of his Algos, the death of his Hawk. The end score was like 7 kills, I think, 7 or 8 kills and one loss. I tested a couple of different approaches against the same pack because I have a bunch of Hawks stored nearby. But my conclusion is that if it's a properly fitted Algos pack, you can't really kill them. I put the trigger into structure in the third attempt, but when I had to bail, I just couldn't stay on grid. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, this is like a bit of a broken mechanic, especially if they sit inside small complexes. In small complexes, you just can't do anything. In mediums, larges, of course, you can just bring a cruiser or something like this, and cruiser will deal with a pack of Algos, no problem. Okay, to summarize, Light Missile Hawk, pretty good ship. I would use it in insurgencies only, personally, because you need lots of advanced complexes and you need lots of destroyers, because these will be your main targets. And the highest concentration of advanced complexes and destroyers is in insurgencies. So if you wanna fly in insurgency zones, I think this fit works just fine. It's not very expensive, and it kills any destroyer practically. But in like Empire faction warfare zones, I would probably choose something else. I wouldn't really use assault frigates at all, to be honest. Okay, thanks for watching. I think the next video will be about a different ship. See you then.